Hi all. Today we are going to discuss the mock test 22nd of theory of prelims, and today we are going to discuss some of the important questions from the basic economics as well as the economic development. So let's start the discussion. I hope you guys have already have done the answers or have done this particular or solved this particular question paper. So I'm directly going to the questions here. So the first question, which of the following is correct regarding WTO subsidy box? Now, in this particular question, what we have done here is we have interchanged blue box and green box. So when it comes to blue box, these are subsidies that are tied to programs that limit production. Clear. But at the same time, blue box means green box means these are subsidies that cause minimal trade distortions and hence it is allowed. So there is interchange between green box and blue box. So 1 is wrong and 3 is also wrong. You just have to understand. See, when it comes to amber box means that contains certain subsidies actually in the form of certain support programs given to farmers, etc., are included in amber box, and this can actually distort trade as well as that of production. Now, blue box means it is essentially amber box, but those items included in blue box have extra certain conditions or extra certain things. That is, it is actually tied to certain programs that actually limit production by farmers. So all those items included in amber box for which there are some certain types of or certain kind of limitation in production is considered to be part of blue box. Clear? So green, as in case of the traffic light. As in case of the traffic lights, you have to understand that in case of green box, these have limited kind of, you know, uh, trade distortion. So that is allowed. So answer here is 2 only. Clear? So you just have to understand that. Next is related to that of IPR, which among the following intellectual property rights are actually covered under the agreement on TRIPS. Copyright and trademarks, yes. Geographical indications, yes. Designs of integrated circuits, yes. Rights over new varieties of plant. This is one area some can actually have some doubt. This is also included. Clear? Now, apart from that, you have to understand that, see, this is a kind of a question that UPSC may ask for prelims. So do check these type of questions. Now, when it comes to that of the intellectual property that is actually covered under TRIPS, you have to understand that there is copyright, there is trademark 2, then third one is geographical indication, then the fourth one is industrial design is there. Okay, industrial design. We have designs of integrated circuit, that is the fifth one, right? Then we have patents and rights over new varieties of plants is actually coming under patents. Actually, patent includes the right over new varieties of plants. This is why certain seed companies such as that of Monsanto, etc., are able to have patent over their seed. It is nothing but the new varieties of plants, right? So that has to be understood here. Then layout and the designs of integrated circuits are there, as we have already discussed. Then apart from that, we have trade secrets as well as the test data. All of these are considered as part of that of the intellectual property. Okay, so these are the items that you have to understand. If you want, you can note down these things: industrial design, copyright and trademarks, geographical indication, designs of integrated circuits, rights over new varieties of plants. It is coming under patents. So patents are also included, trade secret as well as the test data. Now, third one, which of the following statements are true regarding wholesale price index? It is published by CSO. Now, it is wrong. It is actually published by the Office of Economic Advisor. Office of economic advisor under the Department of Industry and Internal Trade. Right. So, Office of Economic Advisor, um, Department for Promotion of, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Clear? Now, its base year for calculation is 2012. Now, that is again wrong. It is 2011-12. When it comes to base year of CPI, it can be said that it is 2012. A single year is taken there. But when it comes to that of the WPI, it is 2011-12. So that statement is also wrong. So answer is D, neither one nor two. Clear. Now the fourth question, when it comes to that of the special drawing rights, allocation of special drawing rights to member countries are in proportion to their IMF quota. Is that correct? Yes, it is correct. Because when it comes to that of the SDR, you have to understand that SDR was introduced because of shortage in international currency as well as gold during the 1960s. Because when world trade started picking up, there was no enough liquidity in the international market based on that of our as there was a shortage in case of the dollars as well as that of gold. So IMF created this currency asset that can be used by the countries and it can be used for exchanging with any of the major currencies around the world. Clear. So SDR can be used by the countries to exchange with any of the major currencies around the world. So the initial general allocation, there are two types of allocation that is done by IMF when it comes to that of the SDR. There is general allocation as well as specific allocation. Now, when it comes to overall allocation of SDRs, it is based on mainly on the basis of the member countries' quota. But when it comes to specific allocation, it is usually done during pressing times, such as that of economic downturn. Last time they had actually carried out a specific allocation was that in 2009 during global financial crisis. Okay, so general allocation is actually done, or in general terms, when they say that allocation is done on the basis of the quota of each and every member country, then that statement is correct. Okay, it is only during the specific allocation, the allocation is not based on the quotas, but based on other types of, analysis or assessment by the IMF. Now, next is other than member countries, SDRs can be used by individuals and corporations. No, it is wrong. SDR is not a currency that can be used for as a medium of exchange per se. It is kind of a currency asset that can be used by the member countries for maintaining their official reserve. It is not for the businesses to transact. It is for the member countries to actually keep it as a foreign exchange reserve. So as a result, it cannot be used by the individuals and corporations. So that statement is wrong. And third one is the value of SDR is based on basket of currencies of all IMF member countries. Is that so? No. It is based on currently it is based on the currencies of 5 important countries or 5 important currencies that is dollar, euro, pound sterling, Japanese yen, and renminbi. Clear. So these are the 5 currencies that is currently there in the SDR basket, and it is based on the value of these currencies and the weightages given to each and every currency that the value of SDR is decided. So here the answer is one only. These two are wrong. And next is the fifth question related to that of gender inequality index calculated by UNDP. Now, what are the indicators that are used in order to calculate gender inequality index? Now, you have to understand that these three are the important indicators that are used in order to calculate gender inequality index. This is very simple and direct question. And UPSC have lately asked these kind of questions. For example, when it comes to that of hunger index, you have already seen. They have already asked what are the various indexes or various indicators that is used in the calculation of hunger index. Similarly, they can also ask questions related to that of global inequality index, etc. Okay. So now when it comes to that of inequality index, you have to understand one is sorry, global, not global inequality, gender inequality index. Okay. Now when it comes to that of the reproductive health, the major items that are looked upon when they calculate it is one is the maternal mortality rate MMR. Then the second thing that they used to do is the adolescent birth rate. These are the adolescent birth rate. So these are the two items that are actually covered under reproductive health. Now the second aspect is the empowerment. When it comes to empowerment, they will be looking into the proportion of women's representation in parliament, proportion of women's representation in parliament. Then the second aspect of empowerment is related to that of the kind of education that they get. Okay, so here what they do is they will be actually taking the proportion of male and female above 25 years with any form or with some form of secondary education. Clear? So they will be taking into consideration the proportion of male and female above 25 years old, 25 years old or 25 years of age who have received some form of secondary education. If the proportion is almost equal, then that means the empowerment is doing well. That particular indicator will be doing well. When the proportion starts going down against women, that means if suppose there are two men for every woman who have received secondary education, then that means in global inequality, sorry, gender inequality index, the empowerment factor will actually come down. Clear? So proportion of male and female about 25 years of age with any form of secondary education is the second component of empowerment. Now the third aspect is economic status, whereby they will be looking into the labor force participation rate of for women. Clear? So do understand these sub parts also. That will also be necessary because sometimes UPSC may ask questions related to it. Instead of asking the major indicators, they will be focusing on the minor indicators or sub indicators. So in that case also, you should be able to do this particular question correctly. So when it comes to that of the reproductive health, you have to understand that one is MMR, maternal mortality rate, and the second one is adolescent birth rate. These are the two things that is being checked under reproductive health. Now, the second aspect is empowerment, whereby they will be looking into the proportion of women who is having representation in the parliament of that particular country. And second aspect is related to that of the education. That is, they will be taking into consideration the proportion of male and female when it comes to that of over 25 years of age having any form of secondary education. And third, economic status means they will be looking into the labor force participation. So the next question is the question number 6, that is GDP deflator. When it comes to that of the question related to GDP deflator, it is very simple and it is very direct. Now, it is easy for you. You can easily identify the answer. It is B, that is, it is used to find overall increase in the price. Now, how do you find out GDP deflator? It is by calculating nominal GDP by real GDP into 100. So please understand or please keep in mind this particular formula also. It is also very important. Clear? Now next is which among the following tools are used by RBI for increasing money supply in the economy? Conceptual question, application question. selling financial instruments in open market operations, will it help in increasing money supply in the market? No, it actually decreases money supply, because when they are selling the financial instruments, what happens? People are purchasing it, right? When government is selling it, that means people are purchasing it. And when they purchase financial instruments, they will have to pay money to the government. So the money available with people is actually going towards that of government. That will actually reduce money supply. So this option will be wrong. Now, increasing the rate at which banks borrow from RBI. Now, what happened? When the rate at which banks borrow from RBI is increased, that means automatically the interest rate on loans will also increase. When the interest rate on loans increase, what happened? It will reduce demand for credit. It will reduce, when the demand for credit is reduced, it will lead to reduction in investments. When there is a reduction in investments, that will lead to reduction in money supply. So overall, you have to understand that when interest rates are increased, that is actually reducing money supply instead of increasing it. Is it clear? So that has to be understood. Okay. Now, next is decreasing the variable reserve ratio. Now, what is variable reserve ratios? That means it is cash reserve ratio or statutory reserve, sorry, statutory liquidity ratio, etc. So when these ratios are reduced, that means the amount available with banks for providing credit increases, right? When amount available with bank increases, what happens? It will lead to higher levels of demand supply, sorry, credit supply. So higher levels of credit supply is created. We have already discussed this concept during our session. So when credit supply increases, what happens? Automatically interest rates come down. When interest rate comes down, more people will be willing to take loans, more people will be willing to make investments. So as a result, it will lead to overall increase in money supply. Clear. So when it comes to that of decreasing, see, similar question was discussed as previous year UPSC question, right? So the idea behind that particular question is similar to that of this question. I hope you guys actually watched those sessions and you have understood those type of questions. We had a elaborate explanation and discussion on how interest rates, how these kind of ratios actually increase or decrease money supply. We have actually discussed about the different conditions and connections, right? Now, finally, we have this point, increasing of reverse repo rate. Now, when it comes to increasing of reverse repo rate, what will happen? It will provide better opportunity for the banks or better returns for the banks when they park their funds with RBI. So instead of providing credit to the general public and to the corporates, sometimes bank may park more of their funds with that of RBI. Now that will also reduce the credit supply. When the credit supply is reduced, automatically the interest rate goes up. This is one way in which you can consider reverse repo and its connection with the credit as well as the money supply in the economy. Another important thing that you have to understand is when it comes to that of the policy rates, RBI will only vary, RBI vary only repo rates, right? All other rates are connected to that of repo rate. As a result, what happens when repo rate is high, it will automatically lead to higher levels of reverse repo rate. So when the option is given here, it has a increasing of reverse repo rate. That means repo rate is also higher. When repo rate is higher, as we have already mentioned in this particular case, what happened? The money supply reduces. So answer is C. See, there's like these kind of conceptual questions. It is very important that you understand the concept really well. Now, which action or actions of the following can be taken by the government to reduce fiscal deficit? Now, what are the different types of actions that can be taken by the government to reduce fiscal deficit? What can be done by them? Now, when it comes to the actions, reducing excise duty. Now, as I've already mentioned, when it comes to fiscal deficit, you have to understand that there is total expenditure, right? Minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. So you have to understand, right? So this is the equation. So we'll think from the side of equation. So in order to reduce fiscal deficit, either we have to reduce a total expenditure or we have to increase the revenue receipts as well as non-debt creating capital receipt. Now, when it comes to that of excise duty, what is excise duty? That is a revenue receipt, right? Now, when we reduce revenue receipt, what we are actually doing? We are reducing the receipt side. When the receipt side is reduced, actually fiscal deficit will increase. So that is not a correct option. Now, increasing budgetary allocation for MGNREGA. Now, that will increase expenditure. So, we have already mentioned the condition. In order to reduce fiscal deficit, either the expenditure should come down or the receipts should go up, especially non-debt creating capital receipts as well as the receipts should go up. In the first case, in the first option given here, or the first statement given here, we are actually reducing receipts. As a result, FD will increase. In the second option, we are increasing expenditure. That will also result in increase in FD. Now, rationalizing subsidies means what we are doing. We are reducing expenditure. As a result, FD will come down. So, 3 is the only option that is going to be correct here. Answer is T3 only. Clear? I hope it's clear. Now, next is which among the following is or are the likely effects of inflation? Now, when there is inflation in an economy, what will happen? It will increase, there will be an increase in household saving. Will there be an increase? Think. No, right? Because what happened? When there is inflation, savings will actually go down. Why do they go down? Because earlier, when a particular person got 50,000, if suppose the entire expenses was only 30,000, that means he was or he or she was able to save 20,000. Now, as the prices of products increase, even though that particular person get 50,000, the expenses will go up. Suppose it reaches 40,000. Now the savings have come down. It is only 10,000 after the inflation period, right? So this option will be wrong. Now, depreciation of rupee. Yes, that was actually correct. We always say that when there is higher levels of inflation in an economy, what will happen? There will be depreciation. Now, why does that particular depreciation occur? Because when there is high levels of inflation, importers or the imports will become cost effective, right? Because as a result of higher levels of inflation, entire cost of production, entire cost of raw materials, etc., will start increasing in an economy. Thereby, imports will be preferred by the people because it is cost effective for them. Now, you can see this particular thing when there is a spike in prices of certain agricultural products also, right? So when the imports, so I'll give you an example. Last year, there was a spike in price of onion. Now, what did the government do in order to control the price of onion? They actually started importing onion from other countries so that the price can be stabilized. Now, when such imports start increasing, what happened? Depreciation of rupee will take place. Why? Because we will have to pay to them, right? When we are paying, we will be paying in, we have to convert rupee into dollars. Just imagine in a simple layman term. Okay, so when we have to pay for imports, we'll have to convert rupee into dollar. So when we are converting rupee into dollar, what happened? Demand for dollar is increasing and demand for rupee is actually coming down. When demand for rupee comes down compared to that of dollars, depreciation occurs. So that is correct. The third is increase in export of goods. Now, will that happen? No. There is less likely that in the short term, especially because of inflation, there cannot or there will not be any increase in export because the raw materials price will be high. So the entire cost of production will be high. When cost of production is high, that particular product will not have cost competitiveness in the external market or in the international market. As a result, the exports will not actually increase. So answer is 2 only. Clear? Now, 10th one, when it comes to that of the public finance, here the question is related to that of the trend. Now, as I've already told you, trend-based questions are the favorites of UPSC. And in most cases, as I mentioned, if it is as a percentage of GDP, Mostly steadily increase or steadily decrease will be incorrect. So here you can see that same trend. You can see that external debt as a percentage of GDP of India has steadily increased. That is wrong. There will be fluctuations. Inflow of FDI, again, the same thing. There can be a lot of fluctuations in that also. So both the statements are wrong. Now, what I want you to do is you have to understand these kind of trends. You learn those trends. You understand that, okay, external debt means as a percentage of GDP, it has not actually increased. So these kind of trends need to be stored in your brain. Now, the most likely consequence of higher minimum wage in an economy is what will be the most likely consequence? An increase in demand for labor? No. When the wages are high, do you think people will go for, more labor? No, most of the people will start actually doing work on their own. You can see this in case of United States of America. As the labor charges started going up in United States, most of the people started doing, uh, you know, the small jobs like that of the electrical jobs as well as the plumbing jobs. They started taking it up on their own. They started purchasing the tools required for that particular work, and they, started learning it from social media, from YouTube, etc. And they started fixing things because the labor charge is very high there. Now, when it comes to India, the labor charge is very low, and you cannot see that particular thing here, because mostly for every service, whether it is in order to fix a very small issue, also we actually take the service of the labor, and the reason is the labor charge is very less. Now, next is reduction in unemployment rate. Now, when if you have to pay very high wages for the labor, and overall people will not actually go for labor because it becomes more expensive and they may not be able to afford them. Do you think there will be decrease in unemployment rate? No. There is a chance that it may lead to increase in unemployment rate because of high levels of what? The wages. An increase in supply of labor. Now that is possible. Why? Because if you think that you are going to get very good amount, or if you are going to get very good wages by working as a labor, then what happens? More and more people will start going for this particular job, right? So you can understand this particular case when it comes to that of the Kerala also. In Kerala, as there is high level of wages, people from other parts of the country is coming to Kerala, and the supply of labor in Kerala have actually increased, right? So in that case, you can mention that can be possible. Increase in GDP growth with this particular factor alone, we cannot say that there will be increase in GDP growth. So that is also incorrect. So the only correct option here is C. Okay. Now 12.1, which among the following best describes vote on account? Now, as you have studied in the polity also, you have to understand that it is the grant in advance pending completion of procedure for the voting of the demands. Because for the entire budget process to get completed, it will take around like 2 to 3 months, right? So what happens is in vote on account, they will be earmarking the expenditure amount required to meet the expenses of these 2 3 months. So that is vote on account. I know most of you will be aware of that. So it's very simple. Now, 13th one, consider the following statement regarding India's balance of payment. Again, it is a trend-based question. Now, when it comes to that of the trend-based question, I've already mentioned that mostly these kind of questions, both the statements as it is consistently increase and consistent like decrease or consistent increase, it will be mostly wrong. Okay, so here it is mentioned that current account deficit has consistently increased. Now there is no chance for that because it always keeps on fluctuating depending upon the prices for gold, the prices for oil, etc. Right? So that you can, from your common sense itself, you can say that it will be wrong. Then foreign exchange reserve, again, this is something that you have to understand. With increase or decrease in the level of trade taking place in the country, uh, we can see that the foreign exchange reserve will increase or decrease, right? So that will also be wrong. So in general, you can say that it is in very rare cases that consistently increase or consistently decrease becomes correct. Okay. Now, so answer is D. Now the 14th one, which of the following is not a member of uh, the OPEC? Now, This is again a favorite question of UPSC. Sometimes they take international organizations and they ask questions related to them. Now, as certain issues are going since last 2 to 3 years or 3 to 4 years related to that of the oil and the oil prices, OPEC will be an important topic that you have to study. Now, when it comes to OPEC, you have to understand that Chile is not a member of OPEC. Okay, you also will have to study the members of these kind of organizations, especially when the number of members are very less. In case of OPEC, the number of members are very less. For example, Algeria is a member. Okay, I'll just note down important members of OPEC here. You can note it down and you have to study. Okay, then Congo. Then we have Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea. Then we have Gabon. We have Iran. We have Iraq. We have Kuwait. We have Libya. We have Nigeria. Then Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Venezuela. Okay, so these are the members of OPEC. Please note it down if possible so that it will be easy for you in the later stages. Okay, so Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, UAE, Venezuela, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia. These are the members of OPEC. Now, next question, 15th one, frictional unemployment generally means. So you have to understand different types of unemployment, structural unemployment, because there is a risk over creation of or of larger levels of unemployment in the country. Like, so UPSC may ask questions related to unemployment. So structural unemployment, cyclical unemployment, right? We have then frictional unemployment. Right. So all these important types of unemployment need to be understood. So first of all, here in this case of frictional unemployment, it is very simple. The answer is A. Right. So workers are actually unemployment, voluntarily unemployed between jobs. So if you are aiming for a better job, you may quit the older job or your old job and you may start searching for it or you may start working or preparing for that particular job, right? So that kind of voluntary unemployment for switching job, you can consider it as frictional unemployment, right? Now, you shouldn't get confused with that of seasonal unemployment here. Now, when it comes to that of seasonal unemployment, it is not similar to that of frictional. In both the cases, there is a kind of a season where you are not in work. And soon after, you are going to get a work, right? Now, in seasonal unemployment, it is because of the nature of work that that unemployment occurs. For example, in case of agriculture, right? All the seasons are not favorable for carrying out agriculture, especially in the rainfed areas. So what happens is in a particular season or a season, they will not have any job. So such kind of unemployment is known as seasonal unemployment. It is because of the nature of job. Now, frictional means it is a voluntary decision by the particular person in order to switch that particular job that they are currently doing. They actually become unemployment for a temporary period of time. Now, 16th one, gender budgeting. Now, when it comes to gender budgeting, uh, here the concept is asked, at least half of government budgetary resources are set aside for promoting gender equality and women welfare. Is it something related to that of gender budgeting? No. The concept of gender budgeting itself is very different. It is to make the entire policy formulation, right, the legislation, the programs, the schemes of government more gender sensitive. That is the major aim of gender budgeting. Right, in that particular process, what they do is in case of allocation of resources, in case of allocation of various amounts of money for different programs and schemes, they will be assessing the impact of these programs, impact of these schemes, impact of these policies towards that of or impact of this on women. Clear? So when it comes to that of gender budgeting, answer is C. Government budgets are dissected to establish its gender impacts and ensure adequate budgetary commitments to women welfare. So it doesn't say that we have to set aside like 50% of the budget. There is no condition like that. Instead, all the programs and policies and schemes formulated by government, they will be checking in the impact of it on women. Also, they will be setting aside certain resources in the form of expenditure for women's welfare, for the development of women as well. So that is the concept of gender budget. Answer is C. The next is consider the statement regarding external commercial borrowing. Now, all external commercial borrowing requires the approval of Reserve Bank of India, Rotten Tomato, right? All. Now, what you have to understand is external commercial borrowings as such does not require any kind of approval from RBI in majority of the cases, right? What they just need to do is they will have to follow the guidelines under Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. They will have to follow the guidelines related to receiving external commercial borrowing. And the companies should, or the particular entities that raise ECB or external commercial borrowing should ensure that these guidelines are followed, right? So this statement is wrong. Now, when it comes to that of startups are not permitted to raise external commercial borrowing, again, this is also incorrect. Now, when it comes to external commercial borrowing, limited liability partnerships, they are not allowed to raise external commercial borrowing because they are also not allowed to have FDI, right? So, those where FDI is not permitted, they cannot actually raise external commercial borrowing. That is the condition. You cannot say that the entire startups cannot take external commercial borrowing. That will be wrong. Clear? So here both the statements are actually wrong and the answer is B. Right. Okay. Now next is the term transfer pricing. It is related to that of the money laundering as well as tax evasion. It is something which is very basic in nature. UPSC have also asked questions from this particular area because they have asked about BEPS in the previous year questions, especially I guess it was in 2016. That they have asked a question related to base erosion and profit shifting. Now, when it comes to transfer pricing, you have to understand that it is what? Pricing strategy where a product or service is set at a very low price? No. Now, that is known as predatory pricing, right? Predatory pricing. That particular term was very famous, especially when the Geo came and some of the Geo's action was actually kind of debated by the experts, and some of them have mentioned that some of the actions of Geo is predatory in nature. Okay, so predatory means, or the predatory pricing means it is nothing but where the prices are set at a very low price, very low margin. As a result, they will be driving out the competitors from the market. Now, here when it comes to transfer pricing, the second statement is correct. It is the value attached to transfer of goods, services, and technology between the related entities. So when two related entities actually get into a transaction, the prices at which goods and services are sold between them or among them is referred to as the transfer pricing. Now, 19th one, so I'm not discussing other options because it is very straightforward. With reference to participatory note, which of the following statements is or are correct? Now, when it comes to participatory, it is an offshore derivative instrument issued by a registered foreign institutional investor. The basic definition of P note. As you can see in the last prelims itself, UPSC have asked a question related to that of P note. Okay, do refer to P note because the questions can come from P notes. If suppose UPSC is planning to take forward with P notes, they may ask something or some kind of in-depth question from this particular area. Now, the second statement, it can issue to only foreign and not to Indian overseas citizens. Now, this particular, there was a lot of confusion regarding whether Indian citizens will be able to, take up participatory notes. But recently, with certain restrictions, Indian overseas citizens of India are allowed to purchase or allowed to invest in participatory notes. So the statement is wrong. But there are restrictions for them. There are certain kind of limits on the level of participatory note participation or investments by the NRIs as well as the overseas citizens of India. Now, the third one, their transactions are outside the purview of SEBI. It is wrong because SEBI is actually bringing all these guidelines, whether when it comes to that of the limit, that limit of NRIs in holding participatory note, or whether it comes to that of the limit of overseas citizens of India, whether it comes to that of the reports to be submitted by the foreign institutional investor. All these things are controlled and regulated by SEBI, so we cannot say that it is outside the purview of SEBI. So that is also wrong. So answer is A, one only. Now, 20th one, sometimes countries deliberately devalue their currency. What would be the reasons? To make exports more competitive in the global market, that can be correct, right? Because when the currency is devalued, what happened? The exporters will gain basic understanding or basic idea of economy, right? So the currency, when it is actually devalued, because if in case of international trade, a particular person will be or a company will be selling a product in dollars or in kind, like mostly it is in dollars itself. Suppose they are pricing their product at $100. Earlier, when the currency is not devalued, suppose $1 is equal to rupees 70, they are going to get 7,000 rupees. Now, suppose India somehow tried to devalue our currency. We devalued it. Okay, it is not possible because we are following a flexible exchange, floating exchange rate system, right? So now one same product is sold for $100, but as a part of devaluation, $1 became 75. Now what happened? The exporter is going to get 7,500 rupee on that particular product. So that makes it more competitive. So the producer may even think of reducing the prices of the product because they are going to get more amount, right? So there is a scope for them to reduce the price. Now, when they reduce the price of the product, they will have the competitive edge and they will have higher levels of business. Now, second is to control inflation. No, because when there is higher levels of when the currency is devalued, what happened? Imports will become more expensive. Now, that may lead to higher levels of inflation, especially when it comes to that of the oil prices, which is a raw material in most of the industries, right? So, in that case, you have to understand that it is not possible. Now, to reduce sovereign debt burden, again, that is also wrong. Why? Because when the currency is depreciated, the payment of loans become expensive. Repayment of loan become expensive. Why does the repayment of loan become very expensive? It is because of the fact that mostly these kind of loans will be denominated in foreign currency, especially in dollars. So if suppose they have taken $1,000 as loan, and earlier it was 70 rupee per dollar, that makes it 70,000 rupee, right? Right. Now, when it becomes 75, what happened? The loan liability will become 75,000 rupee. Now that has made this particular, loans more expensive. So it will increase the sovereign debt burden. The government's debt burden will increase because of devaluation. So it is also wrong. Answer is one only. Now, next, which among the following is not a criterion used for devolution recommended by 15th Finance Commission? 15th Finance Commission is very important. Okay, their terms of reference is out, and you have to actually refer to the terms of reference. You have to also understand the various components that will be used for calculating the devaluation between among the states, devolution among the states. Okay. Now here, if you have read about this in the newspaper, if you are a person who reads newspaper, there was a lot of issue based on the population aspect. Many of the South Indian states, especially those states which actually control their population as part of our population policy, they were of the opinion that the terms of reference or the component whereby 15th Finance Commission have said that population will be a component and the population number will be based on the 2011 census instead of that of 1971 census. Now, as a result, all those states who have been successful in reducing population, their devolution will get affected. And all those states who did not carry forward the population policy successfully or efficiently, they are going to gain from this particular setup. So, as a result, you have to say that this is wrong. All other aspects are components which is used for calculating the devolution among the states. So do read more about 15th Finance Commission. It will be very important for you for this exam. Now next is consider the following statements. Effective revenue deficit is the deficit obtained after deducting the interest payment. Now, no. Now, fiscal deficit minus interest payment is primary deficit. It is not effective revenue deficit. See, when you read that question properly, you will be able to get to the answer because fiscal deficit, it includes revenue deficit it includes the revenue expenditure as well as it includes capital expenditure. It includes the revenue receipts as well as capital receipts, right? So there is no logic or in no way it will be correct. So if you are able to identify that, then well and good. Or if you know the equation very well, if you know the concepts really well, you can do that on that particular basis also. Now, effective revenue deficit means it is revenue deficit minus grants used for creation of capital assets, right? So effective revenue deficit means it is revenue deficit minus grants used for creation of capital assets. This is nothing but here the explanation is given that of primary deficit. Now here primary deficit is obtained from deducting total expenditure from total revenue. No. Budget deficit is derived from total expenditure minus total revenue. It is not primary deficit. So both the statements given here are wrong. So answer is B. Now next is which of the following items are exempted from goods and service tax? Crude oil, as you know, it is exempted. Gold, no. There is a GST for gold around 3%, I guess. Tobacco products, it is also exempted. So answer is 1 and 3. You need to study well about the exemptions under GST. What are the items that are exempted under GST? You need to understand or study about GST composition scheme. Right, all those important items related to that of GST is important. As you have seen in 2017 and 18, they have asked questions related to GST. In 2018, there was no question related to it, but there are certain changes that is consistently taking place or quite frequently taking place when it comes to that of the GST. So as a result, there are chances that UPSC may ask questions related to that of the recent events related to GST. Now, next is National Anti-Profiteering Authority, something that is covered under GST again. Now, what is, they have given the statements here. National Anti-Profiteering Authority is a statutory mechanism under GST law. It is correct. If you don't know what NAA is, do read about it. It is a statutory body that is created under GST Act. And the purpose of National Anti-Profiteering Authority is to identify whether businesses are taking extra profit without passing on the benefit of GST to the consumers. As you know, even though it was said initially that with the implementation of GST, there will be a reduction in prices of the products. But when it comes to that of the actual situation, there is no reduction in prices of the product. So government identified that such a thing is happening and they created National Anti-Profiteering Authority. The main responsibility of NAA is to identify those businesses who are not passing on the benefits of GST to their consumers. Those businesses who do not change the rate according to how GST Council changes the rate. For example, earlier for restaurants, the taxation, the GST was very high. It was around like 12% in certain cases and 18%, etc. But later it was brought down to that of 5%. But there were certain restaurants which charged higher percentage even after GST Council decided to reduce to 5%. So such kind of activities will be caught by them and they will take punitive actions. So on identifying violations, it can recommend punitive actions including cancellation of registration. That is correct. Okay, so answer is both 1 and 2. Now next is the effective implementation of rules of origin. This particular term was in news in the last 2 years quite frequently. So do understand what is rules of origin. It came into discussion when it comes to that of RCEP. It was there in discussion when it comes to that of various trade deals that is associated with United States of America. As a result, there is a very high chance that UPSC may ask a question related to rules of origin. Because as we have discussed, when it comes to external trade, right, when it comes to external sector, international trade is an important topic. And there are questions that UPSC asks from this area also. So international trade is important. It is as part of international trade. Rule of origin is also important. Now, address the issue of taxing the same commodity in two or more jurisdictions. That is double taxation avoidance agreement. That is not related to that of rules of origin. Ensure that non-member nations are not taking advantage of free trading. This is the correct answer. Rules of origin means that, suppose, I'll give you an example so that you will be able to understand this. India and Vietnam is having FTA, right? For example, take the case of ASEAN. So they are having an FTA, free trade agreement with them. So all those products that is coming from Vietnam, so all the listed products coming from Vietnam does not attract any customs duty in India, any taxes in India. Now what happens is China is not part of this free trade agreement, but China wants to get benefit of the free trade agreement even without having such an agreement with India. So what they do is they will send their products to Vietnam, and from Vietnam it goes to India. Thereby, it will be going to India in the label that it is coming from Vietnam. As a result, it will not attract any taxes. So this is how countries try to take advantages of the free trade agreements of which they are not a part. Now, in order to avoid that, rules of origin was brought in, whereby all the products going from Vietnam will have to specifically mention the the origin country from where that particular product has originated, from which country that the product was actually manufactured or produced. And all those products which have a different rule of origin other than Vietnam, or all those products which was not produced in Vietnam, it has come to Vietnam from a different country, they will not get the benefit of free trade agreement. So only those products that is coming from Vietnam, coming from the country, or only those products which have originated from the country with which India have signed FTA will get the benefits of FTA. Clear? So such a particular rule is known as rules of origin. So these are the questions that we have to discuss, that we have discussed. I hope all the ideas are clear to you. Okay, if you have any doubt, you can raise the doubt. We'll have a discussion on the doubt as well. So thank you so much. Thank you for participating in this particular session. And I really guess it was helpful for you. Thank you so much.